So folks, welcome back. To the Brass Ass YouTube Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Suitcase Ace, and today I'm going to be taking you back to 1980. And back then, the adrenaline and the chaos was all over the place, folks. The game back then was very different. Raw and unforgiving, okay? Every night came with hard hits, cheap shots, and the promise of a brawl. You could feel it, before the puck even dropped. The tension, the smell of the ice, and the adrenaline, right? It was pounding in your chest, and we knew what was coming. There was always a fight, folks. Sometimes two, and sometimes an all-out war would break out on the ice. Opposing fans, they packed their rinks when the Yorkton Terriers came to town. They didn't just come to see hockey, folks. They came for the show, right? They came to see, folks, two prairie boys. Dave Brown and Joey Kocur. What they were doing, they were building an identity. Every night, they showed exactly who they were and who they were going to be. And they wanted to be the toughest, folks. They really did. Most feared players in hockey. And Dave had that cold calm, right? He never looked angry. He just stared right through you. And you knew what was coming. And Joey, that right hand of his, folks, even back then was legendary, right? Because when he connected, the crowd went dead silent for a moment. They were fighting for their future in the National Hockey League, as teenagers. And I had the best seat in the house, skating right beside them while they built their reputations one punch, one shift, and one battle at a time. And this was a time when hockey was raw, violent, and full of heart, folks, right? The game was different back then. This is the story of my best season ever. My year with Yorkton Terriers. The first thing that hits me is the atmosphere. The old barns, the smell of the gear, and those long bus rides across the frozen Saskatchewan highways, folks. And I came into that season ready to prove myself as well. I'd always had skill, speed, and I had a good shot, and most of all, I had hockey IQ. But junior hockey back then, folks, wasn't just about finesse. You know what? You had to survive out there, right? Every night, someone was trying to, take your head off or gouge your eyes out. You could fight as many times as you had to and only receive a 5-minute penalty back then and never got kicked out of a game, right? It was the best season of my life because I played on a line with two of the most feared enforcers in hockey history. And that's where Dave Brown and Joey Kocur come in, folks, right? If you knew hockey, you know those names, folks, right? Dave Brown from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, 6'5", 230 pounds, and mean as they come. And Joey Kocur, folks, from Calvington, Saskatchewan, right? And by the way, his cousin is Wendell Clark, okay? I knew they were legends before anyone knew it, folks. I did. I seen them. I watched them. And I was lucky enough to ride shotgun on their line. The sniper between two storm clouds, folks. You could feel the tension. Fans whispering, Brown and Kocur are in town tonight. And the team that we're playing against, the defensemen, tightening their gloves, and those defensemen and the other teams were praying to make it through the night alive. That year, I didn't go back home to Toronto, Ontario for Christmas. We had a Boxing Day game, so Dave Brown invited me to spend holidays with his family in Saskatoon. And the Brown family, absolutely salt of the earth, folks, great people. His dad, Paul Brown, was one of the kindest men I've ever met. They treated me like I was one of their own. Warm meals, laughter, and that feeling of being home, even though I was thousands of miles away. Now, here's something that not a lot of people know about Dave Brown. the guy who fought 3 times in a row without blinking was completely hooked on soap operas, right? Every weekday, Monday to Friday, he'd show up with his brown Honda Civic, knock on my billet store, right? And say, hey, Timmy, right? It's time for As the World Turns, right? I wasn't into soap operas. I didn't know much about soap operas. But how do you say no to Dave Brown, folks, right? So there I was sitting, and right beside Dave Brown, hockey's toughest guy. One of the hockey's toughest guys out there watching soap operas, watching love triangles and drama in a quiet prairie living room, right? To me, it was hilarious, right? And it showed a side of Dave Brown most people never got to see. Then there was, Kocur, folks, built like a bulldozer, right? But with a sense of humor that could light up any room. And one night after a game, right? Joey's feeling good, right? We had a good game, right? He comes up to me and Brown. He goes, "Hey boys," he goes, "I'm on a date this Thursday, and I'm taking the girl I'm with to a movie." And he says we're gonna watch Flash Gordon. That was mistake number one, right? Telling Dave Brown and me, okay? Because Brown and I, we showed up and we sat 3 rows behind Kocur. And halfway through Flash Gordon, Dave, he starts flicking popcorn at Joey's head, right? Then I started joining in, right? And they're watching Flash Gordon in front of us. You could see Joey, he's tensing up, right? Because he doesn't know we're there. He's wondering, what's going on, right? He turns around because he started getting pissed off. And there, me and Brown, we're there grinning like idiots. And Joey just, shakes his head and he couldn't believe it, right? He couldn't believe it. He took one look at us. Let's just say, folks, Joey Kocur never told me and Brown about another date again. Western Canada, folks, one of the toughest places to be when you play hockey. And I'm going to take you down. Moose Jaw Madness, folks. The warm-up war. That's what we're going to call it. Now, if you really want to know what hockey was like in the 80s, let me take you to Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. It was minus 30 degrees out. It was freezing, I'm telling you. The kind of cold that burns your lungs, right? We're on the bus. Frost on the windows. It was an old bus. Not a word being said. A game there and a game back. We had 3 hours on the icy highways. Almost 300 kilometers to play one game. We're rolling into town, right, in a Moose Jaw, and Dave leans back, and it's quiet, right? We're almost there. We've been sitting there for 3 hours. We're getting close to town. You can see the lights in Moose Jaw, and Brown with that devilish grin, and he says, "Boys, during warm-up, let's take over, their half of the ice, right up to their blue line during warm-up." No refs on the ice like it is today, right? It was unheard of back then, right? Refs on the ice during warm. No, there was no music like they have today, right? No light show like they have today. I'm telling you, it's a different game. Just the echo of an old organ, right? The guy's up in the corner, like Slapshot. He's up in the corner playing the organ, right? With a few diehard fans sipping coffee in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, while we hit the ice, right? And we don't stop at center. We skate right into Moose Jaw's end, right? You could see the players on Moose Jaw. They're getting on the ice too, but we went to their blue line. They start cracking off. They're just shouting. They're banging their sticks. They're freaking out, right? And who was leading the charge for Moose Jaw, folks, back then was, yes, Chris Chelios, right? Even back then, folks, tough, intense, and ready to scrap. Boom, the gloves drop, right? Helmets flying, sticks clattering, jerseys being ripped off. A full warm-up brawl, folks, before the puck even dropped, right? And right in the middle of it all, the organ player, he starts playing and blasting even louder, "Oh Canada," right? I swear, he must have thought the anthem might calm us down. But what it did, it just made it better. The atmosphere made it better. "Oh Canada's playing on the organ," and there's a brawl going on. Now, the referees, I told you, weren't on the ice. They come running on the ice, right? With their shoes on, right? They're half dressed, trying to break it up, right? They're slipping and falling. And back then there was only one ref and two linesmen, so there's three of them out there. That's it. The organs wailing, right? Fists are flying. It was chaos. And the beauty of it all at once, folks, that was hockey. Frozen outside and freaking fire on the ice. I grew up in Toronto, Ontario, folks, around St. Clair Avenue West, a real multicultural neighborhood. And most of my buddies, right, I grew up were Italian guys, right? We'd hang around the cafes and pool halls, right, talking about the Godfather, the mob, and hockey, of course, right? So after this wild season in Saskatchewan, right, I came home, right, for the summer and dropped into the local cafe pool hall. The boys were there, the buddies were there, they're all there. They're espressos in their hands, right? And they asked, hey, so Tim, how was your season out west, right? I said, boys, listen, I met two real professional hitmen, right? And they look at me, right? Hitman, right? Who, right? I grin and I start laughing. I go, you know what? I met Dave Brown and Joey Kocur, two prairie boys who don't miss their mark, right? My Italian buddies, they all start laughing, thinking I'm joking, right? But I'm telling you something, a few years later, right, when those two Brown and Kocur were destroying guys in the National Hockey League, those same friends came up to me and said, you know, Tim, you weren't kidding. Those boys are really hitmen. And you know what? That's a true story. Right from Toronto, St. Clair Avenue West to Saskatchewan, two worlds. But I'm going to tell you something, one of a kind tough. Every arena we went to, folks, fans packed the stands, right? Because when Brown and Kocur were in town, they knew it. It was going to be a show. But every goal came with a price, right? Black eyes, bruises, and a few busted knuckles, right? And that was the cost of success in those days, folks. I'm talking about Yorkton, Saskatchewan, folks, right? I gotta talk about Ken, Mr. Devil Danico, right? Yeah, we can never forget that guy, right? Mr. Danico. Kenny Danico, I'm telling you, he's a tough sucker too, bro. I'm telling you he is. Because you know what? When he was playing back then in Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, he was built like a freaking bull, this guy. Danico, he was. He was just 15 years old, right? Already fearless, throwing big hits and commanding respect, right? As a 15-year-old out there, solid as a brick. You know what? Danico, folks, he went on to win 3 Stanley Cups with the New Jersey Devils, and still part of that organization today as a commentator, ambassador, and an all-around class act, right? And Ken's still a great friend of mine today and my family. You know, a few years, folks, you know, I was, later, right, back after Yorkton, I was playing my minor pro in Carolina and Nashville. Well, Joey, he made it to the big leagues with the Detroit Red Wings. And every time Detroit came to Toronto, right, I'd get a call from Joey. He goes, Bailey, he goes, I got 2 seats for you tonight, right? Sometimes he'd invite me to breakfast at the Sheraton Hotel downtown where the Wings stayed, right, overnight. And I'll never forget sitting there with Joey, meeting Stevie Yzerman, Bob Probert, and the rest of the powerhouse team. And Joey, proud as ever, would introduce me to everyone. This is my old teammate from Yorkton. You know what? That's who he was, Kocur, right? Loyal, grounded, and always looking out for his friends. That year in Yorkton, 1980, wasn't just the best hockey I've ever played. It was the most alive I've ever felt. Playing with guys like Dave Brown, Joey Kocur, Kenny Danico, Don Clark, and Brian Coughlin, folks, right? And many more. It was like skating alongside thunder, right? We laughed, we fought, and we won. We built bonds that still last to this day. That's, what hockey is all about, folks. The stories, the people, the moments that you never forget. So look at, thanks for listening to the Brass Ass YouTube Hockey Podcast, folks. I am Sukeses, and that was my story playing with the enforcers. So make sure you follow, subscribe, and stay tuned because the next story might, just top this one.